Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Wild at Work, the Stewardship Series. My name is Megan Pineda. I'm a Conservation Education Specialist with Texas Wildlife Association. Joining us today, we have Mr. Benny Martinez with Corteva Agriscience. Mr. Martinez grew up down South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. He got his degree from Texas A&M University in Kingsville, where he received a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Science. Prior to graduation, Mr. Martinez spent several years working for King Ranch, where he held a variety of positions, including administrative assistant for the cattle marketing and feed yard divisions. He spent the last 26 years working for Corteva Agriscience and is currently serving as the range and pasture market development specialist in the southwestern U.S. He is a recipient of numerous Corteva awards, and in 2019 was inducted into the Hall of Honor alums for Dick and Mary Lewis Clayburgh College of Agriculture at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. Today, Mr. Martinez will be discussing chemical brush control treatments that you can utilize on your property to control unwanted woody species, methods of application, risks and regulations surrounding the use of these chemical treatments. Please keep your microphones muted throughout the presentation. If you have questions, please submit them in the comments area and we'll touch on as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Mr. Martinez, welcome, and I'll let you take the floor from here. I'm going to get rid of my PowerPoint and mute my audio.
Very good. Well, thanks, Megan. Welcome, everyone. I certainly glad to be here with y'all today. Hopefully we can get everything to work the way we want it to. Let me see here. So I'm hoping that you're seeing my screen in presentation mode. Can you confirm, Megan?
Yes, I've got it.
Perfect. Well, again, welcome, everyone. I certainly glad to be here with you all today. As Megan said, I work for Corteva. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Corteva, and then we'll jump into the core portion of the presentation. So I'll start with that. You know, our mission, we are a U.S.-based company. We're actually one of the last remaining companies, or we are the last remaining U.S. company that functions within the range and pasture business. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're an American company. When I first started in the business 26 years ago, there were quite a few, and unfortunately, that's been whittled down. All we do is focus on pasture and land management in our business, but we're also a dedicated agricultural company. So everything that we do, when we wake up in the morning, we're thinking about agriculture. We're thinking about things that are important to our producers and our stewards of land. And so that's an important function as it relates to a lot of times you have a lot of companies that just do a lot of other things. They're involved in pharmaceuticals and there are other things, and they lose a little focus, which we had been part of a multi-chain type of company before that. We are a research-based company, so we do a lot of our internal research for the products that we have existing, but we also do a number of research projects related to new developing opportunities. So not only new products, but new technology. I'll tell you a little bit about technology here in a second. But we are a research and development company that performs not only in the U.S., but we are a global company. So we have I think there's like 30 other countries that we participate in. Similar businesses, similar platforms, and so we do have a pretty good reach. We do have local experts, and so I work with a team. I support a team of about 8. There's 8 individuals within Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Louisiana, and Southern Arkansas that are the local experts, and I support them as the market development specialist to help them look for new opportunities, but also serve as the middle person between our research development and our commercial teams to ensure that we're focusing on the right initiatives, with the products and the technology that we're looking to launch or have launched. So I'll start with, why control brush or undesired plants. And sometimes we can get into the discussion of when we call a unwanted plant a weed. Weed is just a plant that's not in the right place. And so there's a variety of things. Since this is a focused meeting around wildlife, we're going to cover, what I consider to be the most important things as it relates to wildlife. So first of all, controlling low value or invasive competitive species. Often we don't think of ourselves, whether you're in the cattle business or you're, just raising wildlife. You don't think of yourself as a farmer or a grower of something, but you are. You're trying to grow habitat. You're trying to grow something that is beneficial for your wildlife. And oftentimes there's a lot of species that are existing out there that are just not very, very beneficial for what we're trying to do. And I'll kind of show you a little bit about this as the presentation goes on. Creation of edge. Wildlife really thrives on edge, and you can do that with herbicide treatments. You can create more edge by selectively treating certain areas, focusing on areas that maybe have a higher instances of an invasive species or a very just competitive species that maybe is a dominant species. Maybe it's a monoculture of one species, and that's never good. When you have a monoculture, that's not a desirable situation on your landscape. Funnel natural resources to desirable species. So, oftentimes we have a great mixed brush stand that's in the understory of a bunch of mesquite. But if the mesquite is really outcompeting these secondary browse species, they're really not going to be effective at producing a lot of drupe or a lot of foliage or a lot of the things that you really need for them to be consumed by wildlife or utilized by wildlife. And so we can often take out that high competing plant and funnel those resources down to the plants that really we want to try to focus on growing. Maintaining or increasing huntability of the land. So we do a lot of projects in quail country because it has to be huntable. We have to keep it to where people can get in there and actually, swing their firearm to shoot that quail. And so that could be part of the equation as we look to manage, these different species that play a role in why we do it. Improve biodiversity. Oftentimes we don't think about how herbicides can fit into that equation, but it has a very strong correlation. I've been to a lot of post-treatment sites where we've done some treatments, and it's pretty evident to see that we don't limit biodiversity. We increase biodiversity by controlling invasive species. Again, we have species that consume or are very competitive on that landscape, and it's going to prohibit the growth of a lot of things, not just grass. Oftentimes that's what we think, but it does discourage growth for other plants that are important. Encourage mid to low basal resprouts. So we can design a treatment that's just going to control the top, and then it's going to lower the resprouts so that they're accessible to the animals that are consuming them or utilizing them. Instead of having a 10-foot tall tree that a deer can't get a hold of, some foliage, well, you can top kill it and it resprouts from the base, and all of a sudden you have this regrowth that's functioning off the existing root system to give you some benefits. Probably the biggest and most important thing that I think is the most important of why we control brush or unwanted plants is the soil and water conservation piece. The opportunity to improve water infiltration. When we get a 2-inch rain, we want to hold on to that rain event. We don't want it to run off and make it into the bar ditches and run down the creek and leave our property. And so it's really, really an interesting dynamic when we control invasives that are really, really out of control and what the relationship is in terms of water infiltration. Controlling erosion. When our range sites are degraded to a state where we've got a lot of bare ground, we're going to have a lot of wind and soil erosion through wind or physical erosion through rainfall that we just simply can't afford to have happened. Improved rangeland health and soil health is a major influence or reason why you should consider controlling brush or unwanted plants. And then above and beyond, there's a really good reason for you to do it, and that's drought and winter mitigation. When you allow these plants to grow and get bigger on the top, they function better, they respond better. You mitigate that opportunity, that you mitigate those hard opportunities that, or not hard opportunities, but those hard situations that you are posed with because of drought or extreme winter event. Okay, so everybody that's involved in wildlife knows Aldo Leopold. He's the father of modern wildlife management. He published a book in 1933 called Game Management, and it listed 5 basic tools: the axe, the plow, the cow, the fire, and a gun. But herbicides didn't exist back then. In fact, the very first herbicide, which we actually developed, which was 2,4-D, was not developed until 1941. And so I would venture to say that if he had herbicides at that time, he would have incorporated herbicides and technology, because those are 2 things that are really good tools that you can use at your disposal to get to your end goal, and that's managing for wildlife. And there's been quite a few advancements. I'll tell you a little bit more about LandVisor. LandVisor is a great digital technology that allows you to do things that historically you weren't able to do. So I'm going to demonstrate this rain simulator. You may have seen it, you may have not have seen it. This actually came from a picture that I took years ago at TWA. This was probably about 10 years ago. NRCS was doing a demonstration. So what we're looking at here is a rain simulator. And for those folks that haven't seen this before, what this does is it simulates a set amount of rain over that specific flat, and it simulates what you could have achieved in terms of water infiltration, but also what you could have experienced from a water or a soil erosion standpoint. And so the picture on the left-hand side is simply a picture so that you can see what that landscape looks like. A lot of bare ground, maybe a few forbs, a prickly pear cactus, a couple of rocks. But the big take-home here is that we had a lot of bare ground. And it simulated a rain event over the top of this. And so what you're looking on the right is you see 2 containers. The container that's closest to you, the one that's in the front of that tray, is really what ran off of that particular flat when they simulated that rain. If you look closely, you can see that, and I think actually I have yep, I do. So the arrows are a little off, but at the end of the day, you can see the water level is full. That front container is full, which means that we had a lot of runoff. The second piece that you see is that you see a sediment layer, which demonstrates that you lost some soil. Which again is not the preferred thing. You never want to lose your topsoil, because it takes a long time to replace that topsoil. In fact, when you lose about an inch of topsoil, it takes approximately 300 years for you to regain that. We're not going to do that in our lifetime, so we don't want to lose topsoil. Losing topsoil is a very detrimental thing. Now, if you look at the back container really is empty. There's an old sediment line from a previous demonstration, but really we didn't have anything that filtered through the soil and made it to that back container, which means, and I like to refer to these 2 buckets as the bank and the tax man. The front one is the tax man, is because it's what we're giving back. We're not retaining that. And then the back one is the bank, because we're banking that moisture. And so I like to look at it from that perspective, because it really is a true statement. So this is a very different scenario. So in this particular situation, we have a lot of the soil that's covered. We do have a little bit of bare ground, but it's very minimal. We have soil structure because we have living roots that are very encompassing a big portion of that. And so if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, the front container is completely empty, which means that we didn't pay any taxes. The back container is actually about 2/3 full, which means that we banked 3/4 of that moisture, and the rest of it is simply still in the soil that's up on top. And that's one of the reasons why it's not an exact amount. The back bucket is not completely full like the first picture was, the first example. It's just simply because we actually got water infiltration into the soil. And so that's a very dramatic difference. When we catch 2 inches of rain, we want to keep that rain. We don't want to give it back. We don't want to give it away. And that's oftentimes when we have degraded landscape, like that last picture, we're not retaining a lot of that moisture that when we do receive a rain event. Okay, considerations of the use of herbicides. So the first and foremost thing that I really try to focus on is first of all, you want to try to create a holistic approach with a maintenance plan, and that's really, really important. When you look at your so so again, I think I'm at the right spot. So again, the considerations for use of herbicide. I think the biggest thing is that we create a holistic approach. Looking at the landscape, looking at the ranch, trying to figure out, okay, what are our biggest problems? Where do I want to focus the time? But also developing a maintenance plan so that we can continue, the progress that we made. You don't want to make an investment and lose that investment. And maintenance is a very key and integral role in maintaining that initial investment. Understanding the rank and value of the plants in the plant community. Know which ones are of most value and which ones are of least value, so that you can understand which one you want to target. Know your targets. When you use a herbicide, it's really important that you know what you're trying to control, so that you can best control them at the end of the day. Understanding the habitats that are most desirable for livestock or the wildlife species, that goes to the top bullet point. Developing a plan that's specific and attainable goals. And so you want to make sure that you set yourself up for success. You don't want to end up in failure. So making sure that you bite off the right size, and you consider that what's best is really important, so that you can have long-term success. Consider if a herbicide is the right situation for that particular situation. There's certain situations where I wouldn't recommend a herbicide. That's where tapping into an expert really helps to help you gauge whether or not it's actually a good plan for you to implement a herbicide treatment. Consider the layout of the treatment plan. If you're this is really, really important as it relates to livestock, but even quail hunting or deer hunting for that matter. If you're going to create maybe some senderos or some areas of maybe some strip treatments. And those strip treatments, if you're working dogs, you want to maximize the wind direction, the predominant wind direction, to favor how these treatments are all laid out. So laying out that plan is really, really going to be important. Understanding the spectrum of activity and the environmental fate of the given herbicides, that's a big task. But our localized experts understand how these herbicides work, understand their selectivity and their spectrum of activity, and they can help you design a plan that's going to be best suited for you. Use the label for basic insights. The label is going to give you a lot of direction on the potency and the persistence of that herbicide in that environment. Know the application techniques, the strengths and weaknesses. So there's a variety of different ways that you can tackle that task, and they all have their pros and cons. And we're going to discuss some of them here later today. Understanding that the label is the law. The label is a federal, it's a federal document. It is what the herbicide has to have in order for us to have it in the marketplace. But at the end of the day, as a user, you're responsible for following the label and following the law. It is a federal offense when you don't follow what the label says. So that's really, really important. Seek the advice of a specialist. We've already talked about that, but our local guys and gals, they can certainly help you get on the right path to developing a good plan. So considerations for application techniques. And so this is related to density more than anything else. So when we look at a landscape and we try to determine whether or not it's best suited for individual plant treatment versus broadcast, we like to use these numbers that you're seeing here. If we're looking at 150 plants per acre, that's a very good opportunity for us to implement a individual plant treatment basis plan, where we're selectively just treating those individual plants. There's a big benefit to that. Big benefit to just doing individual plant treatment is that we're only applying the herbicide to that one tree. And so we're not affecting the broader landscape. And so there's pros and cons to that, because the con would be if we had a seedling and we missed those seedlings with the IPT treatment, then we would broadcast treatment, could be a more practical approach. Once we start getting into about 300 plants per acre, that's where that break really, really happens. It gets to be more affordable for us to treat on a broadcast basis when we have plants that are 300 plants or more. It's just, you would use a lot more herbicide. It would take you a lot more longer to implement a control plan if you're individually plant treating when you reach that 300 plants per acre threshold. Okay, so I mentioned that obviously there are two different selectivity to those two different approaches. Obviously, the individual plant treatment method, or IPT is what we refer to it, is the more selective, more targeted opportunity. Broadcast, because you're spraying a larger landscape, you're going to have a lot less selectivity. So there's selectivity within the herbicide, and then there's selectivity within the approach that you select. And so, again, if you want to be very selective with your treatments, an individual plant treatment where you're either spraying the leaves or you're spraying the basal stem or spraying a cut stump is going to minimize your effects on the broader landscape. Okay, so there's obviously different approaches to the individual plant treatment. We talked about, the foliar spray, but there's two others that are really, really handy, and that's the cut stump, where you basically can do that any time of the year. If you have a non-root sprouting plant, so let's use one for example. Let's say that you had an oak, and this is a very specific oak, post oak. If you had post oak, you could cut it at the base and it wouldn't resprout. But if you had running live oak, that's a root sprouting plant. So you would actually have to cut it and then spray the stub to kill the root system. Otherwise, it's going to come back from the original root system. So that's the cut stump method. I'll show you a picture of what that looks like here in a second. And then we have the other method that's called the low volume basal stem spray, where we're mixing Remedy and Diesel together, and we're spraying the top 12 to 15 or 18 inches from the base all the way up, all the way around. Very effective approach to being selectively killing certain plants. It's probably best used when it's cooler, in the cooler months. You can do both of these treatments at any time. I like the cooler months because it's just nicer to be out and about. And so as long as it's not excessively wet or the ground's not frozen, you can implement this type of approach to controlling plants. So here's a picture of both of those methods. So on the one on the left is the cut stump treatment. So we've cut it close to the ground. I really encourage you to cut it no more than about an inch from the soil surface. The reason I say that is I was a victim of somebody cutting it at about 12 inches high, and me driving my truck in that pasture, and it made it to my front end. And so that didn't do me a lot of favors. It caused a lot of damage. And so by cutting it real low to the ground, you get rid of the plant. It's not going to be a dangerous situation for somebody that's either walking out there or if they're, if you're operating equipment. That stump will eventually deteriorate and decay over time, but as low to the ground as you can. The focus is going to be around what we call the cambium layer. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that cambium layer is the outside, basically where the bark meets the core of the plant. And so you want to focus your spray around that, and then the sides of that trunk that's left. And so you can see that they sprayed this entire stump and this entire stump. If this was part of the original plant and you only sprayed this one, you'd kill part of the root. This plant would come back from this cut piece right here if you didn't treat this one on the right. The picture on the right hand side is the basal stem spray. So they're probably going up higher than 12 to 18 inches here. But this is just an example of what that looks like. So you would be spraying all sides all the way around, every single one of those stems in order to control that plant itself. If we missed again one of those stems, we would miss the entire plant. And if there's no use in spraying 3 of the 4, if we truly intend to control the entire plant. So the leaf spray, or what we call the high volume foliar leaf spray method, is a method that you spray the leaves, but it's much more timing dependent. So I was telling you that the prior 2 you can do anytime. This one has to be done when that plant matures its leaves and it's cycling carbohydrates back to its root mass. And so that's very, very critical for the leaf spray method, because we're banking on those carbohydrates to take that herbicide down to the root to kill the root. If you don't catch it at the right stage, what you end up doing is you end up top killing the plant, and you don't control the plant entirely. And so it's very, very important that you spray when those plants are going to be susceptible to the herbicide. The last bullet point here is soil applied. There's a variety of different soil applied herbicides. We have one that's called Spike ADDF and Spike 20P. That you can apply at the base of the plant. Tordon 22K also works for certain plants. So if you have junipers, you can actually spray a spot treatment of Tordon 22K on the base of the plant, and it will kill that juniper. The dependency on the soil, really the biggest thing is that the soil is, especially as it relates to spike, is not too heavy in clay. Your heavier clay soils, what happens is it binds to the active material, making it not available for the plant that you're trying to control. So there are some caveats related to the soil applied herbicides. The soil applied herbicides do have the flexibility, and the fact that you can actually apply them any time of the year, but they are very selective. So there's spike will only control certain species. You can't control mesquite typically with spike. You can control oaks, but you can't control mesquite from a soil applied product like spike. So it's very dependent on the species and very dependent on the soil type itself. So that's a picture of the foliar treatment. This is an individual that has a sprayer mounted on a UTV. He's foliarly spraying that mesquite. This is just a picture of the spike concept. You're trying to put those pellets that soil applied material under the drip line of the plants. It's taken in through the roots. The way spike works specifically is it causes the plant to defoliate. So in the second picture here, you see the plant defoliated. In the third picture, it tries to refoliate, and all of a sudden it defoliates again, and it kills the plant by limiting the ability for that plant to do photosynthesis and create some energy for its roots. Okay, so I know I've said a lot, and I know a lot of it's hard to remember. We have a really easy guide that's called the Brush Commanders piece. It is a 2-page side. This particular one is for mesquite. You can see on the top here it has a picture of mesquite, and it says targeted species mesquite. On the front page, it gives you all that you need to know related to how and when to foliar spray, to leaf spray. It also tells you the herbicide, how much to put in each size container. So if you had a 3-gallon sprayer, you'd put 4 ounces of zero, an ounce of surfactant, and an ounce or 2 of dye. And so these are really, really handy guides that you can pick up at your local retailer. Most of these guys carry those in stock. They're pretty handy little pieces. On the second page, or on the flip side of that it talks about the basal stem spray method. So that's the remedy diesel spraying the stems. And it tells you the same thing. It tells you when and where and what kind of equipment to use. And it also tells you the rates that you would use for the herbicide and for the amount of diesel that you would need for that application. So really handy guides as it relates to individual plant treatments. Okay, so we also have another guide that's called the Southwest Ranchers Guide. If you'll scan that QR code, it'll take you to the landing page where we have that resource. That resource it tells you about weed control and brush control the techniques, tells you about a variety of different things. When you click on that link, you can actually save that to your icons as a home screen. You can do that by clicking the little box with the arrow. Uh, Once you click on that, scroll to the bottom where it says add to home screen, and then click on the ad on the very top. And then you'll have this particular piece on your cell phone 24/7. And when we update it, it'll actually get updated on your phone as well, because all it is a web link that links to this particular guide. We do have another one that's a weed ID guide. If you're interested, you can scan that code, that QR code right there, and then follow the same procedures to add that to your home screen. I just thought I'd figure that I'd add that as well if you all want the weed ID guide as well. Okay, broadcast applications of a liquid or a dry. So you can apply spike on a broadcast basis. But most of the broadcast applications that we're going to be doing is with liquid. You can do that with ground rig. Ground rigs, are best suited for plants that are less than 3 foot tall. They're limited in terms of the height of the boom. And so anything that's over 3 foot is going to be difficult to control because you're not going to get good coverage. A drone is best suited for maybe sculpting or doing smaller treatment areas. Their capacity to do large acres is limited. They can do approximately about 30 to 40 acres an hour. And so they don't have the ability to do large tracts. But if you wanted to do selective areas, a drone is a very good tool that you can implement for that. If you want to be a little bit, cover a little bit more country, but maybe be a little bit more precise, a helicopter is a really good fit for that, because you can cover a typical helicopter can do about 800 acres a day, and they can be a lot more precise because they're flying a lot slower. They're flying approximately 70 miles an hour compared to a fixed wing that's flying about 150 miles an hour. Fixed wing are best suited for large tracts or blocks. They can do about 1,000 to 1,200 acres a day, and so they can do large areas, but they're going to be spraying a very large area. And not only that, their release height and their speed, they tend to get more off-target drift that'll affect plants that are within a close vicinity to non-treated area. So you got to keep that in mind. The timing of the liquid application is the most important consideration. So similar to what we were talking about, the IPT foliar treatment, when you're controlling mesquite, the timing is absolutely critical. Broadcast applications are a little bit more sensitive to timing because you're broadcasting, you're only applying 4 gallons by air, and that's a very small amount. And so you're counting on that plant to being in the right state so that it's susceptible to that treatment. Okay, so other considerations. So there are a variety of different herbicides out there. They're not all created equally. There's some herbicides that require a license and some that don't. So for the products that do require a license, typically those are considered federally restricted or state limited use herbicides, and that does require a TDA license for you to use those. You're also required to maintain a certain amount of CEU credits, continuing education credits, so that you can continue to have your license and maintain your license in the long term. There are a variety of non-restricted products. In fact, that's one of the things that we're moving towards, is trying to develop products that are safer in the environment. They don't require a license. So we have a variety of different products. For example, Sendero, Remedy, Pasture Guard, Duracore, and Chaparral all are examples of products that carry a general use pesticide status, don't require a license, don't require that you document, when and where you sprayed. Although I still advise that you document anyway. You're not required to do that by law. And so there's a huge difference between those two. Nowadays, you really don't have to have a license anymore to do a lot of to control a lot of the targeted species that you want to control. It's just we've gone to picking products that are much safer, like I said, in the environment. Use restrictions in regulated counties. So if you are using a state limited use pesticide like 2,4-D, you got to be cognizant of that, because there are some very specific use patterns that prohibit the use of those products in certain months. And so you got to be very cognizant of that. Use sites and other restrictions. I mean, it's just important. That's one of the reasons why I said make sure to look at the label, because the label is going to tell you a lot about where and when you can use that product. The spectrum of activity, we already talked about that. I mean, that's a key consideration that you need to keep in mind. If you're trying to be selective, you want to pick a product that's going to be selective that you're broadcasting when you're making broadcast applications. And the soil residual is another important component. If you want to minimize the forb shock, pick a product that has a lower persistence. That's going to help you, increase recruitment for those post-treatment applications. So this is just an example of the selectivity. So on the left-hand side, we have two herbicides that don't have the one on the left. So Sendero is very selective. Surmount is very broad spectrum. Neither one of these, actually, Sendero doesn't require a license. Surmount does. Now this is just selectivity. Now on a longevity standpoint, we have the picture on the right. Pashguard does not have any soil residuivity, so it's going to be short-lived. Spike has very long soil half-life. It can persist for a lot longer of a time span. So we're going to have more forb shock with a product like Spike compared to Pashguard HL. Threw this one in there. I know that y'all probably don't have a whole lot of white clover, but we just developed a new product. This just kind of shows you the selectivity that we're developing in terms of the marketplace. So this is Nova Graze is a brand new product that producers can use actually to spray right over white clover and maybe some winter forages. So you could plant maybe some food plots that would incorporate some ryegrass and also some white clover, and spray it with Nova Graze for weeds and not control the white clover. So this is pretty phenomenal that we're coming out with herbicides that don't kill clover. Now, this is specific to white clover. So if you have bird clover or red clover or crimson, this product will control those. It's only selective to two different legume species for the time being. That's white clover and annual aspidisa. Okay. This is an example of a place that we did a broadcast application on mesquite. This was a Sendero application by itself. So I'm on a 2-track road looking at the untreated area. I took this picture. What I want you to focus on is obviously the amount of brush that we had. We do have some prickly pear there, but we also have limited grass and we also have limited forbs. So you see some forbs out there. If you look on the very bottom, you can see some small little bitty forbs that are trying to grow. If you reflect back on the rain simulator, when we get a rain right here, a lot of it's going to run off because we have a lot of bare ground, not a lot of soil structure. We may get some absorption, but it's going to be pretty limited. And that's one of the reasons why these forbs are so small, in addition to the fact that we have some pretty dense, heavy competition against those forbs. Now, I turn around and I take the next picture, and what you see is the treatment area. So you can see that, we didn't control all the brush. We have some mixed brush that we left. We didn't control the prickly pear because that was Sendero application, and Sendero doesn't control prickly pear by itself. But look at the forbs. The forbs are healthy. They're blooming. They're bigger. Lots of forbs right here. This picture was taken on the very same day. There was no difference. So very big difference. When we received a rain, that rain made it into the soil. We have some soil structure, a lot more soil structure, a lot more resources that are going to the vegetation that's growing underneath, plus the mixed brush that we left behind. There was a wildlife study that we did several years back. This was done in 2013, 2014, and 2015. All the dots are all the different locations where we did those with the respective years, where we actually tested different combinations because we were interested. We were wanting to know what is our selectivity or what is our spectrum with all these different mixes. So we did Sendero by itself, Sendero with Remedy, and then Sendero with Tordon. And we evaluated those at 3 months, 1 year, and 2 years post-treatment. The results of that were pretty clear. These were the researchers that were involved with that project. They were all at one time with Texas A&M. Dr. Charles Hart was actually one of my colleagues. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years back, but he was my one of my mentors. So we've done with a great set of individuals that were able to quantify the big study. We rated them as tolerant, moderately susceptible, or susceptible. So as it gets closer to red, that means that we had more activity on it. If it was green, we had less activity. And these were the results of the trial. So we monitored every single species that we had in that specific treatment. And you can see that Sendero by itself controlled a very narrow species. Now it affected them short term, 3 months. You can see that some of them showed some effects, but as we get out in time, 1 year and 2 years post treatment, those plants became tolerant because long term it didn't have the ability to control those plants. So if you have, for example, Grangenio, or a very good species, or Guayacán, or some others that are really good wildlife browse species, Sendero is a really good option to leave those species that are important from a wildlife perspective. If we wanted to control pear, we'd have to do this one right here. And it's going to mean that we're going to affect more plants at the end of the day. We're going to affect prickly pear. We're going to affect, this one here is elbow bush. We're going to affect, this one here would be Grangenio, which is, again, a first choice browse species. So we just got to take that in consideration. But we do have the flexibility to be selective with herbicides, is what I'm trying to tell you. So this is another example of that thing. This was actually a 2018 application where we had Guayacán that didn't get hurt. We also had kidneywood, which is another very highly desirable species. And then we had Grangenio, that's also another desirable species. The other thing that a lot of people get nervous about is, well, I'm going to take my screening cover away. Well, I'm going to tell you that we didn't, if you remember that last picture, we didn't take a lot of the screening cover there away. We just limited the stems that were left. And in many cases, if a deer was standing back there, we probably couldn't see him. What I see more often than not is that when we see a deer in the Sendero, he runs back in there and he's feeling protected, maybe 30, 40 yards back there. That still gives us an opportunity to see that deer on a limited basis. Whereas if it was these plants were completely foliated, we wouldn't be able to see that. So very, very big difference, very, very dramatic difference there. So I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk a little bit about Landvisor. Just want to give you a quick flavor for Landvisor as a digital technology. So what is Landvisor? Landvisor is a digital technology that we use sophisticated imagery, data analytics, and satellite imagery to produce what we call actionable insights. These actionable insights help us to know where we have a targeted species, but also to help us understand where those exclusionary species that we don't want to control may persist on that landscape. The other thing that Landvisor does is it helps us understand the soils. So if you wanted to prioritize a treatment, you can prioritize it on your best soils versus maybe selecting an area to treat that has poor soils that are not going to yield you the same response. So with Landvisor, because we are monitoring it with satellite technology, we've built some tools to be able to monitor the mesquite growth and time the application when it's best suited for best results. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side on these bars, the one in the middle in green is when we follow what Landvisor tells us on when to spray. Our average mortality is 80% with a very narrow range of variation. Our variation was plus or minus 8.31%. When we look at not following the prescription of Landvisor, we yield 40% mortality on mesquite, but look at the range of control, very wide range of control. We have a plus or minus 23.18%, a lot more variability. That's 40 points difference in terms of the variability between following the prescription and not following the prescription. So the tool does an excellent job at helping us understand when it's best to treat to maximize our opportunity. So I mentioned that we can track soils. So this is just an example of an area that we have mapped where we can see the different productivity range productivity for in a normal year. We can actually change that to a less than desirable year if we're having a drought or a better than average year. This insight right here layer is a mesquite density map. So this shows us where our mesquite population is at. And so if we wanted to utilize this map to just focus on areas where we have a dense stand of mesquite, we can utilize that. I actually use a different map that's called the potential gain map, where it actually overlaps the soils on top of that. So this is the exclusionary species. So this is the same area. I actually have an interest in oaks and elms. And so every color pixel in there is those other exclusionary species. So if I had a producer that said, I want to target my mesquite, but I want to leave off areas where we've got these other desirable species, we can craft a map that's going to be selectively treating just the areas that we want to treat. If we were interested in repairing areas, we can exclude those because the tool has the ability to track those as well. And we have a built-in buffer to help with that. I have a couple of slides, and I'm going to close it up really quick here. I know I'm pressed for time, but we did a project with the East Foundation where this was actually when we launched LandVisor as a pilot project in 2019. They had a site that they wanted to treat. That's called the Coma pasture. I actually went back 2 years post-treatment and did a mortality assessment, and we had an 86% success rate in terms of mortality. That's really good for a mesquite treatment. But one of the other things that they did with this particular site is that they actually monitored grass and forb growth. And so I want to show you some of that. So one of the things that they did is they took clippings pre the treatment, right after the treatment, and then a year after treatment, and then 2 years after treatment. And so here, what you're seeing is the amount of grass growth that we had pre-treatment. So we were at 1,000 pounds of grass. Right after treatment, it grew just a little bit. 1 year post-treatment, it grew a bunch. We had a wet year, and then we got followed by a dry year. So the grass production wasn't as good 2 years post-treatment, but it's because we had a drought. Okay, so we stimulated grass growth. But what about the forbs? What does everybody think we did with the forbs? Most everybody will think, well, we did a herbicide treatment, so we're going to hurt the forb response. But actually, we had an increase. So actually, right after the treatment, we actually had a bump in forb growth. Why? Because Sendero is selective, and it only controlled certain weeds. It allowed those other weeds to flourish, kept the mesquite competition away from those nutrients. So we did have a little bump right after application. And then the forbs really blew up 1 year post-treatment. So we had a great response in terms of forbs. And then they declined pretty significantly. And then, again, that's a function of the rain, not because we had long-term effects from the herbicide. The herbicide's gone. With Sendero, we don't see much more than about 30 to 40 days of soil half-life. And so it was gone, somewhere over here. And so, really this is a very good example of how we can be selective, not only for brush, but also minimize the long-term effects that we're going to have on forbs, which are really critical from a wildlife perspective. So this is a different pasture that we did on the East Foundation. I just wanted to show you another picture. This was the Casa de Brazil pasture. This is 1 year after treatment. Here you can see some forbs that are growing right here. You see some secondary species. Here's some Cenizo. Here's a persimmon plant that didn't get controlled. I think this is probably a Brazil that's right here. This over here looks like a Granjeño or a Huaycan over here. But the take-home message here is that we had forbs, we had browse, and we controlled the overstory of the more problematic plant, which is mesquite, that's taken a lot of our nutrients away from these other plants in a situation where we have a lot of mesquite. In summary, herbicides play a vital role and a viable role, and they are a major tool in wildlife habitat management. Selecting the herbicides, the technique, and the technology is key for meeting the goals and objectives for your operation. Seeking the advice of an expert can help you make better decisions that are more sustainable long term, that'll help you meet your goals and objectives long term. And I can't stress this enough. Seek the advice of local experts. If it's not us, there's other people that can provide some guidance. There's no one else that's going to know the herbicides as good as we do. But at the end of the day, there's all kinds of resources out there. TWA has some resources. NRCS has some resources. Extension has some resources. You can utilize all of those resources to help you ensure that you're on the right track to building a good plan for you. These are the pictures of our team, or not pictures of them individually, but where they exist. So I'll leave that up just for a second so that you can maybe look to where your particular place is at and see who your representative. If you want to take a picture of that, you're more than welcome to take a picture. And that way you can contact them directly to help you with whatever needs you may have. If you didn't catch that, you can scan that QR code right there, and then you can plug in your area code, and it will find who your specific range and pasture specialist is for Corteva. And that concludes my presentation. So I'm going to kick it back to Megan and see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Benny. Appreciate it. Yeah, we've got one question about the, I think you may be able to see it in the chat as well. The recipe for remedy diesel basal spray application, can it be used for stump cut application for target plants of mesquite?
Absolutely. Yep. So the only thing different is the ratio that you would use. So typically for cut stump, we're recommending a 15% remedy and then the balanced diesel. And so that would be approximately about 20 ounces in a gallon. So you would put 20 ounces and then fill it up to a gallon mark with the rest with diesel for the cut stump treatment. For the basal stem, I recommend at 25% a ratio instead of 15. The reason I do that is that when you develop a rough bark on that plant, in order to penetrate that rough bark, that higher percentage of remedy is going to do a better job. So that would be 32 ounces of remedy and then a balanced diesel with the basal stem spray. Any other questions?
That was the only one, unless anybody's got something to add right here at the end. And if not, then we sure appreciate your time, Benny. Thank you very much. I know it's a lot coming to us from Oklahoma today. So
not a problem.
We've got one last question.
It was my
pleasure. Previously shredded mesquites, how do they respond to treatment?
Oh, that's a great question. So we do not recommend that you treat mesquite until you have 2 growing seasons past you after that manipulation. And the reason for that is that it doesn't respond very well to a treatment. And the reason why is that you have limited leaf surface area when that plant is 1 year post-treatment. You don't have enough leaf surface to catch enough herbicide to control the existing root crown of that plant. Once you get past the 2-year mark, you have enough foliage. The other thing that happens is in the short term, that plant's really trying to gain ground. It's trying to build its factory back. And so it's trying to put up on some top growth. And we don't want top growth when we're spraying mesquite. So by waiting 2 years, that gives us a better ability. I would wait 2 years and then at least 2 years after that mechanical manipulation before you treat mesquite.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank everyone for attending with us today, and we'll see y'all next month, hopefully. Thank you, Benny.